Assalamualaikum and welcome to ESC 3018 Waste Management. And today's topic is about industrial waste. Okay. And of course, as usual, we will have a look at the learning outcomes. First is you guys will need to know how to describe industrial waste, okay, what exactly it is. And then you need to discuss the policy and management of industrial waste. Right? And lastly, because you know all of this waste in the industry is a very big sector, okay, and you can imagine how much waste is being produced by our industrial sector. Okay, if all of the waste goes into landfills, we're going to run out of landfills very, very soon. Okay, and to avoid that, okay, that's where we look at circular economy, okay, as one of the alternatives where you can actually use this waste to produce other things. Okay, so it becomes like you reduce the amount of waste generated because some of those are going into another industry as the raw material, right? So industry, what is it actually? Okay. Just by having this picture, yeah, I hope you guys have a general idea, okay, what is related to this picture. Okay. You will need to do something, okay, through your attendance later on, yeah, and hope that you got all right. Okay. Now, classification of industry. When we talk about industry, right, it's a very general term, isn't it? Industry. Okay. So what? Yeah. Industry is very big, right? And if it's depending on the nature of business or rather the nature of products, okay? And in 1999, MSCI, okay, developed this thing called Global Industry Classification Standard, so GICS. Yeah? It's basically a classification of industry, because otherwise, if we just say that the industry, what industry? There's so many different industries, and how does one, basically try to differentiate one from the other? Okay, so these in GICS actually there's 11 sectors. The 11 sectors: energy, materials, industrials, consumer discretionaries, consumer staples, healthcare, financials, IT, communication services, utilities, and real estate. And you know, underneath that, there's actually 24 industrial groups, okay? And beyond that, there's 69 industries. So can you imagine? Basically, there's actually 69 different types of industries, okay? And it can actually fall under any one of these sectors, okay? One thing, yeah, I don't know if you notice or not. When we see industry, it doesn't always necessarily means that it's producing something. Now, when we talk about producing product, for example, it's not always the case. Yeah, if you see here, communication services, utilities, these are services. These services, but it is still called an industry. Okay, however, these industries provide services to the consumer. Yeah, it's not basically it's not producing the actual thing, but it helps make our life easier. Okay, so that's this one. Financial, information technology, yeah. Healthcare would be a mixture, okay, because we have things like services, okay, of course, things like the hospital, for example, but we also have pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals produces the drugs and the chemicals needed for medicine, for example. Okay, so those are also included under healthcare. Yeah, so just to give you a brief idea, when we say industry, okay, it's a very big term, and you guys have to remember that it actually corresponds to so many different types of industries, and not only one, not only two, it's 69 industries. Okay, and why is this significant? Because if you think about it, waste is related to the process. Okay, so each of these industries actually they produce different types of waste. Okay, because this topic today is about industrial waste, right? So we're going to have to look at what are the potential types of waste produced by the various types of industries. Okay, and we are not capable of covering all industries. So you guys have to bear in mind, okay, the waste characteristics will definitely depend on the type of industry itself. Okay, what it uses, does it produce something, is it producing products, or is it offering services? Okay, and then the waste will follow. Okay, anything that we do will generate waste. It's a well-known fact. Yeah, but the type of waste, yeah, if you still remember during our field trip, characterization of waste, that is different. Right. Still on the classification of industry, when we talk about the different types, okay, another way to easily remember it is we can say that there's 4 classes of industry: primary industry, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary. So primary is the one where these industries, they deal with raw material. Yeah. So for example, if you look here, keyword is the raw materials. Okay, and they are the ones who extract those raw materials. So these are resources actually. Okay? Resources means whatever is in the earth, okay, whatever is around you, those are raw materials, potential raw materials. So if you have things like underneath the earth, mining actually extract all these ores and metals. Okay, they extract that and they sort of produce, they try to refine, for example, those raw materials. Yeah, and then we have things like farming, fishing, because you know these are the industries that basically deals with the raw materials directly. Okay, whereas when we talk about secondary industry, okay, they deal with finished goods. Okay, they take the raw materials that is being produced by the primary industry, they process it until they produce a finished product. Okay, so that is the secondary industry. Okay, so this industry process and manufacture products from raw materials. So that is the description. And the easiest thing we can see is like car assembly. Car assembly, you know, all the raw materials, all the steel, the foams, everything comes from different places, and you will have one factory that assembles all of this. So this is considered secondary industry. We have tertiary. Tertiary is services, okay, like I mentioned before, they provide a service. Okay, and this can include transportation, tourism, retail, financial services, real estate, things like hotels. Yeah, those are the services industry. Whereas lastly is quaternary industry, and this it deals with expertise. It means that these are the sort of industries that deals with R&D. And they are trying to develop new products. So the thing that they are marketing is the design, for example, the research-based products, and also the expertise, the people, okay, the capacity building, yeah, and education is included under that. Yeah. Okay, so a basic industrial system. Okay, you strip everything down, yeah, and you just look at the general elements of an industry. Okay? It's basically only three. Yeah? There must be something going in. Then it's that thing that comes in must be processed into something. Okay, and then that is the output. Okay, so it's essentially only three things. It doesn't matter if it's a manufacturing or even if it's services. Yeah? If you really think about it, there's only three things. And inputs can be so many different things. Of course, the easiest one would be raw materials. Right? But, you know, doing something will always require energy. Right? It always requires energy. If you want to process something, you need to use the equipment. Right? That equipment is powered by electricity. That's why you need energy. Right? Something that people don't usually realize. Okay, and when you have this process, who's the one who's going to operate it? Okay, the labor. Huh? And you know, anything, factories or any business, you cannot run on air. You need to have money. Here it's called capital. Capital is money, right? And so on and so forth. There's so many different things. Here it's called government grants because sometimes you don't have all the capital. Okay, if you look at businesses, yeah, a lot of the times they are dealing with loans from the banks. Yeah? Those loans, as the business prospers, okay, they will be able to pay back the loan. But if something wrong happens, yeah, they will. Some people will get bankrupt, so on and so forth. Yeah, so that's the existence of government grants. It is a way for the government to help the businesses. Yeah, and apart from that, we also have the logistics, because all of this, the raw materials, energy, doesn't like appear in front of you automatically. It must come there through the logistics. It must be transported in a way. And so that is also an input. Then you have processes. Processes is something that is being done. Yeah, the process. Okay, is it assembling? Is it doing a chemical process? Okay, is it doing cutting? All of those reactions, yeah, it is a process. Okay, and then we have outputs. Okay, outputs here doesn't only mean, of course, the most obvious thing would be the product. Okay, here, goods. Yeah, those are the products. Okay, however, yeah, there will always be waste. And just now, when you use all of this, the raw materials just now, you will generate wastewater, solid waste. Sometimes also generating waste gas, right? And these are what I said just now. Okay, the type, the characteristics of the waste, okay, will depend on the industry, because different industry requires maybe different raw materials, maybe it uses solvents, okay, maybe it uses don't use energy, but they use it doesn't use electricity, but it uses methane, for example. Yeah, so but it's still energy. Yeah, but if you burn something, yes, some waste gas will be produced. There will be emission. Yeah? Right. So hopefully you guys can understand when we talk about industrial waste. Yeah, there's so many different things. So it can be solid, okay, it can be liquid, it can be gaseous. Yeah, emissions, residuals, and unwanted waste from an industrial operation. And usually it can be classified into two. We have hazardous and non-hazardous waste. So hazardous waste is waste that poses a severe threat to human health or the environment if improperly disposed of. Okay, so this immediately, okay, if there's a light bulb there, suddenly boom. Okay, anything that may cause harm, okay, to human health or the environment, it is all hazardous waste. Yeah. Whereas if we have non-hazardous waste, is actually almost similar to household waste. For example, packaging. Packaging is industry. Okay, it's within the industry, and you know, when you package something, eventually that becomes the waste. But it is not hazardous waste because it doesn't really have that the toxic element. However, it is still considered as solid waste. So whatever it is, the industry, they are required, okay, to manage the waste. It doesn't matter if it's hazardous or it's non-hazardous. Hazardous, of course, lah. They will need to properly manage it. But even for non-hazardous, actually there must be a system where the waste is managed properly. Okay. Now, before we go any further, just for you guys to bear in mind, when we talk about industrial waste, there are different sets of actors. So actors here is not, it's not related to movies or whatsoever. Okay, this is the parties responsible. Okay, we have the waste generator. Okay, for example, just now when we talk about factories, okay, factories that they produces the waste. Okay, so this entity is called waste generator. And waste generator has the responsibility to dispose the waste according to the law. In Malaysia, we have the EQA 1974. And this has covered most of, well, basically all of the industrial waste that is produced. Now we have scheduled waste, we have so many different types of waste and related to different types of industry. Okay. Now, apart from that, we also have waste transporter, because sometimes, you know, this waste generator, they are required by law to have specific area to put their waste. Okay? And that waste is called, basically it's collected, okay, by the waste transporter later on. So they need to have a specific place, okay, they put it there, and until it reaches, it's either time, okay, 6 months, or it reaches a certain amount, okay, before it will need to be sent for disposal or for treatment. Okay, so when the time comes, okay, when the waste needs to be transported elsewhere, the waste transporter must play the part. Okay, so they pick the waste from the waste generator and deliver it to the waste processor. Okay, and waste processor, of course, is basically the one who receives the waste and they treat it. And they treat it. Some that cannot be treated, okay, it will be disposed of. That goes to the landfill. Yeah. And whatever that can be recycled, they will recycle. Okay, so there's 3 actors of industrial waste, right? Now, management. Okay. The types, of course, just now, I've already mentioned, the types of waste produced varies greatly depending on the type of industry. Different type of industry produce different type of waste. For example, in the US, they generate 6.9 billion tons of industrial waste. However, okay, of course, that sounds like a lot. Yeah. However, 97% of that is wastewater. So they don't really have much solid waste, for example, or hazardous solid waste, but they do have a lot of wastewater. But if you compare that to Australia, for example, of all the solid waste that is produced in Australia, bearing in mind this is not just the industry, it's the municipal, all of this, 30% is actually industrial waste. So you can imagine there's a lot solid waste that is actually an industrial waste compared to the one in US. Okay, so that is an example, but of course, to find out the amount and load of pollutants, whatever it is usually, for example, in the wastewater, if you want to know what type of pollutants is contained inside the wastewater, you will need to measure it. There's several ways of how to measure that. And if it's not possible, then it can be estimated based on the type of similar industry. Okay. Now, as it is, okay, if we look at waste management as a system that each company or each business, each industry has to plan, they have to manage, okay, we can immediately say, okay, it's not possible that every company, every business, every factory will have a similar waste management plan. And because, again, the type of waste is different, maybe some factories doesn't actually produce wastewater, for example. They only produce solid waste. So the management plan for the waste will be different. Because after all, the enforcement that the government do through the Department of Environment, okay, it has its own regulation. It has its own act. So that gives the power to the DOE, okay, to enforce certain things. Yeah, but beyond that, they're not able to. Okay. For example, right now, as we speak okay, we don't know in the future. Actually, some work is already heading towards that. So at the moment, okay, our industry in Malaysia, they don't enforce carbon emission. They don't. Things like the gaseous emissions, yes, but not carbon. Yeah. So the industry is not penalized if their processes does emit CO2 into the environment, into the atmosphere. Currently, there is no regulation on that. Okay. However, DOE is making an amendment. Okay. Well, hopefully within this year or next year, that's going to come into effect. Okay. And then we're going to be able to see carbon now being regulated, okay, in Malaysia, right? So coming back to the slide just now, okay, apart from thinking about what type of process the industry is doing, okay, at the very basic, you can just look at the quality and quantity of the waste. Okay, and you can actually look at the pollutant content. Okay, and but you have to bear in mind, okay, sometimes the same product from different industries produces different characteristics. Okay, it depends on the process that is being used. Okay, maybe it uses different chemicals, and or it uses catalysts, it uses different solvents. Okay, so eventually the waste that is generated will be different, and so will be the characteristics. So these characteristics will determine how to manage or solve pollution problems. Okay. Now we will go a little bit on the various types of industrial waste, and I will also share with you some examples. First is liquid waste. I know you guys have learned wastewater already, so that's exactly it actually. Okay, and in industries, for example, a lot of these processes require water. They require water. So as the water is being used, depending on the life cycle, okay, where the water enters, where it goes out, whether it is mixed with rainwater, for example, it will come into contact with various types of compounds. Okay? If it's in a place where it has radioactive materials, the water may come into contact with these materials, okay, it will be carried over. The same with toxic materials. Dirty water, because it's raining, maybe there's flooding, okay, and that will actually affect the characteristics of the water just now. Liquids, rinse water, waste detergent, rainwater, okay, you can imagine if all of this is mixed together, okay, the amount will be very, very big, okay, and actually that water contains a lot of pollutants. So many different types of pollutants. Okay, and without proper management, this contaminated wastewater, okay, will flow into water bodies. Okay, what will happen to our natural environment? Okay, what will happen to the ecosystem? Yeah, so this is the risk if the wastewater is not being treated. Yeah, imagine something like this goes directly to the river. Those in Selangor, I'm sure you all are fed up already. Tak ada air je, water cuts. Because there's a lot of industries in Selangor, in KL, and so many different places lah. Okay, but if there is an illegal dumping of chemical waste into the river, okay, and if you know, for the water that we have, the running water, the tap water, it actually comes from various water intake points along different water bodies. So one of it is the river, okay? And that raw river water will be treated in the water treatment plant, okay? Because it will need to be treated before it is deemed fit to be supplied to consumers, which is us lah. But that plants, they are not suited to treat chemical waste, toxic waste, because it's supposed to be river water. Why did you have toxic waste inside there? It's the waste treatment plant the water treatment plant cannot deal with such waste. That is the reason why they have to close. They cannot, because even if they treat it, the toxic materials will still be contained in the water, and that will be supplied to the consumers. Okay, so now that chemicals goes right back to you. Goes right back to you. That's the risk. Okay, so hopefully you guys will understand what is the impact of having something like this. Yeah. Now, this is just an example. Okay, previously I went and visit this place. Okay, Nestle factory in Chembong. This is in Negeri Sembilan. Okay, and actually this factory is the largest producer, the largest manufacturer for Milo. Okay, Milo, that drink, the energy drink or the chocolate drink. Okay, and as you can see here, yeah, this is actually wastewater from the Milo plant. and you can see here as well. I did take a video, but I wasn't able to embed it into PowerPoint. Okay? But if you're interested, I will share that later on in WhatsApp group. So can you see that? It looks like that drinking water, isn't it? It looks like Milo. Yeah, because actually this is coming directly from the Milo factory. Okay, so this is actually their wastewater treatment plant, okay, where they will treat this before it is being released into the river. Okay, so probably you can't see here, but this is aerobic treatment. So they will oxidize, okay, this very chocolatey wastewater. Okay, and then it goes here. Maybe you can see it. There's a few ponds over there. Okay, here as well, where this will be sedimented. Okay, flocculant and so on and so forth. And lastly, the water will become less jernih. I can't remember the English word for it. Okay, so it become clear lah, the water. So instead of something like chocolate like that, it becomes like water. So that goes into the river. Yeah. Okay, solid waste. Now, industrial solid waste, of course, it includes different kinds of materials. Okay, and things like paper, plastic, wood, cardboard, packaging materials, scrap metals, every other solid waste can no longer fulfill its intended purposes. Okay, of course, if you ask me, hazardous waste. And hazardous waste is also, these are not considered hazardous waste. Okay, this is actually the non-hazardous solid waste. Okay, so all of these things actually can be used, can be reused. Okay, but it's not only this, paper, plastic, wood, but it actually contains things like aluminium, things that can actually be recycled. Okay, which is where we come into this point here. What may be considered as waste in one industry can be used as raw materials in another, or even, like mentioned before, it can be recycled. Yeah. So, example, I went for a visit here to a company called Art Matrix. Okay, they won a lot of like sustainable awards. Yeah, this is actually in where is this Tamming? Sorry, it's still in the area of Serdang. Yeah, I can't remember the district, but basically what I wanted to show here is this thing. This is a spill kit. Maybe you can't see it there. Spill kit. And this spill kit, actually, they make it to be used inside the plant. Yeah, in the case of any spills, chemical spills or whatever. But what's interesting is that the kit that they produce here, that they use here, is made from their own solid waste. Just now. So whatever is produced that is wasted, they use it as a spill kit. So you can actually see, basically, if you compare it with different types of companies, for example, maybe they will dispose it. But this company is very good at that. They have very good sustainability thinking. Okay, they say, hey, why not? They produce this type of things, and they still need to buy spill kits. Why don't we use that as a spill kit? Okay, and they did that. And another thing is, if you notice, the facade here, the ones like this, right? The colorful things, that actually is recycled from their own waste as well. The aluminium that they use in their processes, okay, they actually produces a lot of it as waste. So the CEO said that, oh, why don't we use that? Why don't we use that as a decoration? And you can see here, it becomes very, very nice, isn't it? Very colorful. And if you see it from the distance, it looks very good. You won't even imagine that that actually is produced from waste material. So just to show, just to share with you the current practices. Okay, then chemical waste. Chemical waste, most of industries, apart from, for example, services may not have too much, except for things like cleaning services. But most industrial activities, they will produce chemical waste. Can be inflammable, it can be corrosive, toxic, or explosive. And so the disposal of this must be handled by specialists. If you still remember just now when we talk about key actors, okay, key actors here is the waste processor. Okay, they are actually specialists. Okay, they are able to manage to treat this type of waste. Okay. So this is an example. If you have different types of chemical waste must go into different types of containers, and must be in a specialized room or area. Okay, there are specific requirements that you have to fulfill before that place can be the collection point for the chemical waste. If you see here, that is actually for face mask. And this is the yellow bin is for clinical waste. Clinical waste. Okay, toxic and hazardous waste. So most chemical waste generated by the industries, including laboratories, hospitals, chemical plants, and workshops are toxic and hazardous. Okay, if it's not properly treated or disposed, it can lead to very serious health and environmental risks. Okay, which is why the DOE, or rather the government, has already stated that only authorized and specialized facilities can treat this type of waste. And actually, there's a list of that you can look at in DOE's website. If that is in Malaysia, if other countries, then you will need to take a look at their Department of Environment website as well. Usually it is mentioned somewhere in there. Okay, in DOE, yes, Malaysia has a list of approved facilities that can handle these types of waste. Okay, so this is an example of the DOE website. And if you are working later on in the industry, okay, as an environmental officer or OSHA, okay, you will have to deal with DOE. You cannot run. And of course, this is different if you are actually on the DOE side. Okay, those two are the routes that you may go into later on. But anyway, schedule waste. It's always one of the things that the industry sometimes find it a headache schedule waste, because these are all schedule waste Kalau if for chemical waste, hazardous waste, it is all schedule waste. And there are a lot of guidelines that the industry can actually look at if they do produce the type of waste that must be disposed of as scheduled waste. And this is the this is the link if you're ever interested, or if one day you wanted to look at this, right? So for example here, these are the types of containers Yeah, so like this one, bunghole drum, this is for inorganic or organic liquid waste. Okay, it cannot be used for corrosive waste such as acids or alkalis. And plastic drums compatible with most solvents, but things like diethyl ether and chloroform should be stored in steel drums. Okay, so you can see in the guideline, it already has mentioned all of these things. Yeah, you need to, but for you guys, you will need to know, okay, there are different types of containers for different types of waste. Yeah, right. Let's have a look at some of the industries. So I know just now it's a bit general, yeah, but I won't go too deep lah, because this is for different types of industries. Okay, for example, iron and steel industry. Yeah, so usually iron and steel, okay, when they are mined, okay, it must be processed first before it comes in the form where you are familiar with. Okay, this ore, yeah, it usually requires things like surface treatments. Yeah? And surface treatments, it uses strong acids such as HCl or sulfuric acid. Okay, and when this process is happening, it will produce a very large amount of highly acidic waste. And because remember, you are using a very strong acid. Okay, and this acidic waste also contain ferrosulfate and ferrochloride compounds. So not only that, you also, depending on what type of ores you are processing, they can include gasification products such as benzene, naphthalene, anthracene, cyanide, ammonia, phenols, crystals, together with more complex organic compounds, yeah, which is referred to as polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAH. Yeah, so that's what you have to basically understand. When I say different industry will produce different characteristics of waste, because here, because of the nature of the process, it's going to have this type of waste. Whereas if it's maybe a different type of metal, it won't produce ferrosulfate or ferrochloride, maybe a different type. Okay, so that is iron and steel. How about oil? O&G, oil and gas. In oil and gas, okay, we are looking at the refineries. Okay, why is it called refinery? Because usually, if you see things like in the ocean, where there's platforms, and actually they extract the oil from underneath the earth, underneath the surface lah, at very specific depths. Okay, that crude oil, that is why it is called crude, crude oil, meaning that it actually has a lot of different components in there. And this crude, okay, will go into, so this is if we're talking about refinery. Refinery means that that thing that is crude is refined into something better or something more specialized lah. Okay, so this crude goes into the distillation tower. Okay, this distillation tower is actually a piece, a unit operation, okay, where it is heated. Okay, and you know, different chemicals, okay, or different chemical compounds lah, yeah, has different boiling points. I hope you guys still remember chemistry. Okay, so through distillation tower, those things, those elements, those chemicals that has a lower boiling point, okay, lower boiling point, yeah, meaning that at lower temperature, it will turn into gas. And that's what it means by boiling point lah. Okay, so those lighter portion will go up. Okay, imagine you have this crude in there, you heat it up. Okay, those that are lighter, okay, or it corresponds to, okay, I'll put it here, lighter corresponds to lower boiling point. Okay, so they will go up, okay, and it will come out of the distillation column as a gas. Okay, and if you remember, crude oil actually contains a lot of hydrocarbons, and the lightest form or the most simplest form is hydrogen, H2. Yeah, even if you look in your chemical table, H is very, very light. Yeah. Now, as you go down, the ones with a bit higher boiling point, yeah, it will come out at this point. Yeah, and then you have the very, very heavy one here and at the bottom. Okay, so basically, if you are driving, a petrol car, you're using gasoline. Okay, gasoline is here. It's actually quite light. Yeah. Whereas if you are driving a lorry, for example, lorries usually uses diesel. Diesel is a bit heavier. Diesel is here. Okay, and if you are on a plane, usually they will use jet fuel. Okay, here. So all of this, it is very interesting because this is why crude oil has to go into refineries, because this needs to be processed before you can get so many different products. You can get hydrogen, you can get gasoline, goes into cars, you get jet fuels, goes into planes, you got diesel, goes into lorries or like heavy machineries. Yeah. So these kind of processes, okay, you will you will generate wastewater because you will have the water contacting with the oil, okay, and this will also contain things like sulfide, ammonia, phenols, and so many others lah. And that wastewater will need to be treated. Okay, power industry. Sometimes we don't actually know. We just know that as you turn on, okay, as you turn on your light, electricity. Okay, we don't really think about what sort of process that is happening behind the scene. But if you think about it, as you turn on the switch of your lamp, for example, or whatever lah, if you are charging your phone, stop and just think about where does that electricity come from. Okay? So in general, a lot of places lah still uses coal, arang batu, coal. This coal will be burned, okay, in the boiler here, you see, and then you will have actually when it's boiled, the heat will heat up water, okay, and that water will turn into steam. Steam goes into the turbine, turbine is connected to a generator. As the steam goes into the turbine, okay, it will turn. Okay, and that motion will also turn the generator. Okay, and that cycling motion, okay, will produce electricity. If you're interested to look at that, this is actually related to like magnets and EMF lah, electromagnetic force, and how electricity is being produced. So from the generator, you will actually get the electricity. It goes into transformer. It will be transmitted into long distances before it reaches your house. Yeah, this is what we call a national grid. Now, because there's actually a few power plants in the country, yeah, and they are all interconnected in one grid to supply electricity to the whole country. All right. So first things first, coal just now, when it is burned, okay, things that are burned, when you do barbecue, for example, you see this the smoke, yeah, the black smoke. The same thing is happening here. So here you actually get emission. In that emission, there will be CO2, will be NOx, SOx, yeah, so on and so forth. Even sometimes there's mercury. Okay, here from the stack, it is called flue gas. Okay, and then the ash, things that are burned after it finished burning, the ash will be left. Okay, this ash actually has to be treated. Okay, now there's two. There's gaseous here, there's ash here. Okay, and then water just now that is heated up. Okay, that will go into the cooling tower. Okay, and actually cooling tower ni, the processed water comes from usually from the reservoir or from the river, from the sea. Yeah, and this will also generate some a small portion of wastewater. Yeah, and sometimes you have to treat it as well. Okay, that is in the power industry. Okay, how about complex organic chemicals industry? Because you may not know it, but different industries actually deals with a lot of chemicals. Okay, and the wastewater from these factories, okay, they can be contaminated by pollutants. Yeah, and these pollutants again will probably require different types of treatments for you to be able to treat that water. Okay. If it's solid, again, you have to treat it, you have to send it for treatment or disposal. Yeah. Pulp and paper industry. Okay, I'm just going to go very quickly here. Yeah. Pulp and paper industry actually emits a lot of wastewater. Okay, and their wastewater contains very high concentration of BOD and COD, and also suspended solids. So you cannot simply, release it into the water bodies. Yeah. Large amount of wastewater also produced in the pulp bleaching process. So this is the example of the process when we talk about the pulp and paper industry. Debarking, this starts from the tree or from the tree debarking. You will get some BOD here. All of this will go into one wastewater source. Will combine as one wastewater, and then you have to treat it afterwards. Okay, textile industry. Textile uses a lot of dyes, and if you guys are familiar with batik, like down here, batik, batik, it uses a lot of dyes as well. Okay, and generally it has a quite high BOD concentration and suspended solid. So can imagine again that it is a highly it cannot just simply be released into the environment. You will really need to treat it. But batik is nice, isn't it? It's there's demand for it. All of the things just now, all of the industries, they're producing things that consumer really needs, consumer really wants. So it's not possible for it to stop. Okay? But what we can do is to ensure that the waste is treated. Now, it cannot simply we cannot simply look at the dollar and cents. Yeah, you have to think about what is the impact towards the environment. Okay. Okay, mining, probably I will skip this. You guys can always go back and look at that. Yeah. But I want to talk more about the industrial waste management. Again, you will always see this triangle. Yeah. And I've already described this in our previous lecture. Okay. And of course, the last one is disposal. Because we want to reduce the amount of waste that goes into the landfills, because basically we don't really have the space for landfills anymore. Yeah. So these are some strategies that the industries can use, and waste avoidance and waste minimization. So that is all of this lah. If they do any 3 Rs or 5 Rs, and now I heard the 7 Rs as well. These are efforts that the industry can do, not only to reduce their waste actually, but they can increase their material efficiency. Yeah. When I say material efficiency, remember in the earlier part, I was talking about 3 elements of the industry: the inputs, the process, and the outputs. So one of the inputs is raw material. Yeah. So if you are able to be very, very good at using all of the components in the product, okay, eventually you will require less raw materials because everything is very, very efficient. The process is efficient. The packaging is minimal. Yeah, I don't know if you know, like for Nestle products, if you guys notice, the packaging, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The packaging itself, not the weight of the products, the packaging. So if you look at that and you notice that, it's actually an effort made by Nestle to actually reduce the packaging amount. Yeah. And of course, one of it is cost. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's also regarding waste. With less amount of packaging, as a whole, as an overall, you will have less waste to treat. Okay, this is what we say waste minimization. Yeah. Incineration. Incineration, you guys can have a look at WTE. WTE is actually called waste to energy, where the waste that is being produced is actually incinerated. Okay, and when it is incinerated, the similar concept to the power plant just now, okay, the heat that is being generated will be used to create or to produce electricity. That is why they say it as WTE, waste to energy. Okay, landfills. Of course, landfills is the least favorite option. Okay, because the process itself, it requires a long time, and then we don't really have the space for it. Would you rather have a landfill behind your house, or would you like a forest, or for example, a farm? It's a different thing, because landfills, you know, there's a lot of negative connotations related to it. Right? Then deep well injection, this is more about oil and gas lah. Yeah? And then effective strategy for Rs and industrial symbiosis. So this is, we'll have a look at this one later on. But basically, for example, this is in Japan. Yeah, and what they are aspiring into. Okay, in 1996, the industrial waste generated is about 400 million tons, and in 14 years, actually, they managed to reduce that to 385.99 million tons. Okay, and basically, if we look further down, okay, the things that are directly landfill, it has reduced. Before, in 1996, 8% goes into the landfill, whereas in 2010, only 2%. So maybe we will need to update this to see what's happening in 2022. Yeah? But however, in 14 years, they managed to do this. You know, why can't we do it in Malaysia? Right? And you see here, recycling. Of course, this one has increased 22% from 13%. So they recycle a lot. Okay. They also reduce the number of waste, okay, through various types of efforts lah. Okay. But processing residue also almost similar lah. Landfill after processing, okay, it used to be 34 million. Now it's only 2%. Okay, recycle after processing also increases here. Yeah. And lastly, what is landfill? Yeah, for those things that, you know, cannot be recycled. Okay, the very, very minimal thing lah. Yeah, it reduces to 4%. And the total of recycle is 204 million tons. That's 53% of the total waste. So this is what we want, actually. This is what we want our industries to aspire to. Reduce their amount of waste that goes into the landfill. Right? So apart from now, just now it's more on the solid waste, but in terms of wastewater, okay. In terms of wastewater, approximately 4.5 billion liters of water per day are consumed in Malaysia for non-domestic use. So this is actually about 40% of the total daily amount of water consumed in the country. It is a lower quality of water, however, the benefits outweigh the disadvantages. Because this lah, an example is this company. It uses 95% of the processed water from an alkaline automated rinsing line for its production process. So basically, it reduces disposal costs, because just now, any treatment actually incurs cost, because you need to have the operating and also the capital cost. And ROI is return of investment in less than 2 years. That's very, very good. Sustainable approach in addressing water shortage and disruptions impact, and because of course, if there is any water cuts, you don't really you won't really feel that, you know, really worried, and because some of the water was actually recycled. You don't really need a lot of raw water, potable water. Okay? And then wastewater reuse can mitigate pollutants discharged into the receiving water body. So you try to keep it within the system, okay? And you are able to treat, as it goes higher, you are able to treat it more effectively rather than you just release it into the water body. Okay, management of industrial waste through circular economy. So just now, if you guys still remember the industrial symbiosis, it also related to circular economy. Right? Circular economy it aims to redefine growth, focusing on positive society-wide benefits. Okay, these are all wordy, I know. Okay, but what you have to focus on is actually, we want to, at the end of the day, you want to reduce the waste. Okay, this is the characteristic, design out waste and pollution. You keep products and materials in use, and then you regenerate natural systems. So these three is the key elements. And what is happening is that, there's so many different industries. And what may happen is that the waste of industry A may become the raw material for industry B. Okay, and when industry B has used that, their waste can actually be used by industry C. Okay, so can you see that? Can you see that although the waste is still being produced, okay, it actually is utilized as something. So it doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't go into the landfill. You don't need to have the requirements for a landfill. That is basically what we want to look at. Yeah. So, for example, the pulp and paper industry. Yeah, you have just now we talk about the wastewater. It has a lot of pulps, it has high COD and high BOD. Okay, those wastewater goes into treatment here. So it goes to anaerobic treatment. Okay, and in anaerobic treatment, actually, it will produce biogas. Okay, and biogas here, if they just put a generator, okay, they can actually generate electricity from the biogas produced. Okay, and this electricity can be used to power up, like here, like the treatment unit operations, or even in the process itself. Yeah, and then after it is finished with anaerobic treatment, it goes to aerobic treatment and clarifier. Okay, and aerobic, what happens is that you will have sludge. Yeah, you will have sludge at the bottom here. Yeah, and this sludge can actually be used again to produce more biogas. Yeah, and biogas then again, similar thing here, goes to the generator, and that extra energy, it is energy saving in the long run, because the factory will require less amount of electricity. Yeah, so not only is that beneficial in terms of less energy required, it also translates into lower energy costs. So you actually use the waste, to create, to lead towards income generation. Okay. Multi-industry symbiosis. So this is what I mentioned before. Just now, power plant. Power plant. So just for example, the fly ash. This is from the boiler. So that ash, just now when I said it has to be treated, okay, it can actually be used for to enforce cement. That ash. So you can actually get a sustainable cement using this type of material. Okay. Whereas the used water and natural gas of the oil refinery, it goes to the thermal power plant, because just now you only use the water for cooling tower. You don't really use it for the process itself, kan? So you don't really need like high quality water. You can use with used water. And then things like the sludge, pharmaceutical here. Okay, the sludge goes into fertilizer industry. Now, because sludge usually contains high amount of carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus. So depending on the nature of the industry, it can be used as fertilizer. Okay. And lastly, on agricultural waste, I think this is at least you guys can visualize it a bit more. Okay, just now when we have I already covered this last week, but anyway, you have the agricultural waste that goes into the AD. AD produces the biogas and also the digestate. Biogas can be used as energy resource. You see it here, H2CO2 syngas. Or the digestate itself, the one that is almost like the sludge, you can actually use that. It actually has two portions. It has the liquid and solid portion. The solid one can be used again for energy generation, okay? Or you can use it for pyrolysis and you get things like bio oil and char. Char here can actually be used as fertilizer as well, but it can also find its use as a chemical. I think sometimes people use it for flocculation as well. So many different uses. So the liquid just now, you can actually recover it because it's high in nitrogen and phosphorus. Okay. You can recover that. You can actually use it in algae. Okay. You grow the algae, you grow it, and this can actually goes to the fish industry because algae is the food for fish and also for shrimps. Okay. And the biomass itself can be used to treat wastewater. Okay. And so there's a lot of different ways you can strategize this. And well, the possibilities are endless. Okay. So as a conclusion, look around you. You yourself as an individual, you would want to live in an environment where it is clean. You don't really, everything that you eat is clean, it's healthy. And basically, the only way we can do that is if everyone takes responsibility of their actions. Manufacturers, they have to make sure that their services, their processes are clean and they do treat their waste. The industry has to play a part. And of course, people say that things can't change, right? But you are the new generation. You are the younger generation. You are going to be at the forefront. So you yourself has to have that, that drive. You must have, you must think about the environment. Now, whatever that is happening around you, you have to bear in mind that everything has a cost to the environment. And of course, we are living on this earth. There's only one earth anyway. So take care of the earth. And that's it for today's lecture. I hope you understand everything. I know that it is a bit long, but we do have to cover for like 3 hours, right? So hopefully you guys can understand. If you don't, you feel free to contact me to reach me. and ask questions. And I hope to see you soon. Bye.